What do you aim to capture that's not possible in a photograph?
Time. When I look at a photo is brilliant for doing what photos did. They captured time. You know, Henri Bresson, his first experiments with photography and the running horse was to be able to capture the frames of time and prove what he wanted to prove. So you're freezing time, but a realist painting, you're painting in the dimension, you're adding time, you're not freezing it. So for an oil rig or bucket excavator, the time is the fourth dimension that you don't get in a photo. Photos are frozen. I'm looking at a painting that's evolving right in front of my eyes. So it's time.
That's always the question for me, because I started taking photographs, you know, back when I was in art school, just as painting scrap, essentially. And so what I was just going for was like personal reference material. But at a certain point, after my first digital camera, actually, which of course was, you know, way in the future, there were photographs that I was like, I don't need to change anything here. There's nothing to add as a painter. And yet, even though I think my photography's gotten better and better, I still, like, there are certain images, it's like, I have to paint that. And the reason is, when I'm in the realist zone with my paintings, there's something about this thing that is so tactile to me that I've got to get my hands all over it by making the painting. So that instead of this slick photographic paper surface, perhaps, I see brushstrokes, and the hand of the artist shows up then in a way that communicates part of that feeling that it was in my brain.
The artist hand. I mean, you can see the hand of an artist in kind of an indirect way in a photograph, but paintings are literal records of the artist hand actually moving across the surface, which is a reflection of the artist's mental state at the time. I think that's what I would say.
I like the beauty of painting, of oil painting, and I think it's super cool when you see a realistic portrait painting, that you can see that quality of brushes and like the brush strokes and also like the paints and stuff, but it still makes it really realistic, you know, like you can definitely tell that it's not just a photograph, it's a portrait painting. And you can see the brushes and also like the technique, you know, the quality of the oil paints. So that's the big difference, I feel like, you know, and that's what I try to capture with a painting. Like I want someone to see it, they will know that it's not like hyper realistic, like super detailed, but they can tell that it looks a lot like the person, you know. That's what I try to capture.
That's a good question, because my work is based so much on photography, and I use black and white photos as references for my work. I collect old photos of people I don't know, and they're anonymous to me, and that's what really gives me the freedom to invent who they are and invent their story and the scene of the painting. What I do is I choose the color for the painting, of course, and to essentially tell my own story. And I also sometimes change the figures in the painting. I can delete someone from the scene. I can also change their expression completely to maybe change the meaning of the whole painting. So what I do essentially is I try to connect these scenes and these photos to my own story and my own experiences, my own memories.
When I'm painting, it's all up to me. I can create the scenario, all the details. I can choose the time of day, the features of the sky and the light. I can finesse the expression on the characters' faces, because I do a lot of figurative work. And besides that, there's all the unintended things that I'm not aiming for, but are kind of good. For example, my particular skill set, things that I can do and things that I can't do, they're all evident, I think, in the finished painting. And besides that, whether intended or not, I'll focus in on those things that are important to me in how the painting looks. And so the things that aren't, then there's that kind of play that's going on between what's focused, what's not focused. And I think that's the difference for me.
So what I believe that I'm trying to capture is the essence of the subject. It's not just the essence, but it's understanding the subject on a different level. I'm not aiming to paint every little hair or every little leaf. It's just being able to find what it is that makes that subject what it is.
For me, as a person who draws animals, I think it's very important to capture that animal's emotions through art. I really focus on the eyes, emphasize on the positioning of the animal, the facial expression, the little tiny details. I feel like the little tiny details really make the piece come together, make it even more real. I want you to have this emotional connection with the piece, not only make it look beautiful, but also be able to connect with the animal.
It's an interesting question because all the drawing I do as a medical illustrator is digital, and it's always most important to teach a concept, right? So we're essentially telling a story. So, you can tell certain stories with photographs, but it's kind of limited in terms of teaching purposes, right? So if I'm creating a didactic illustration and I really want to emphasize certain points for the neurosurgeons, I'll color, the veins blue and the arteries red, which isn't, true in the body. Or, I have the luxury of adjusting the opacity of certain structures to show what's like hidden beneath. So it's anything you can do to describe, a concept more efficiently. And photographs are very limited in that regard.
The main thing that I think about that's not possible through a photograph is color. For example, try to imagine the last time you tried to shoot a photograph of a sunset, and then try to think of the best photograph of a sunset you've ever seen. Now try to think of the best painting of a sunset you've ever seen. I mean, I don't think it compares. There's just something about that RGB CMYK combination that doesn't work in real life.
For me, it's mainly a question of color. Photographs don't catch the feeling that you can get in a painting, and there are too many details in the background in a photograph. I like to be able to change the color of items in the photograph or change the background on a painting, so that it just changes the whole mood. I like to be able to put color in the shadows, and that just so seldom comes through in a photograph.
Number one, I would say the color, just the richness of the color that I can achieve with paint and the layers of paint that I'm putting on in one area, might be 4 or 7 layers. I just don't think you can get that kind of richness of color in a photograph.
I was thinking more like color. Color and texture are just things that can be amplified in comparison to a photo, to a painting. It's like you can get so much texture, it's almost 3D almost. Photography is great, it's a great part of realism painting, but something about adding that 3D element and popping color and stuff and having a hand in it makes painting so much a next level of photography. Just something about painting just brings it to that next level.
There are certain particular scenes I see, and it's like a presence is speaking to me through a visual language, revealing a magic moment. And it's as if to say it's of extraordinary beauty, signifying an event. And that presence compels me to document that moment of emotionally charged experience. I use the photograph like a blueprint, but I use paint on canvas to try and bring out the colors and the shadows, create a little dimension, and to make heard that secret conversation I heard in the first place.
I want to create works that celebrate the human spirit. And to me, the best way to do this is let the body language of the figures reveal the human dramas. For example, in this piece, Ascending Man, it's a work that I started about a year ago when I was facing some difficult situations. At that time, I intended it to be a personal statement about being bold and courageous in the face of adversity. I wanted kind of a feeling of pushing forward into the unknown with hope and faith. I don't know, now, today, in these very difficult times, I think the spirit of this work is even more appropriate.
The photograph, why don't just have a photograph? It's photographs are great. There's beautiful, fabulous artists who are photographers. But I think once you commit a piece to paper or canvas or wood or whatever you paint on, you are elevating its importance right then and there. So when someone just looks at a bunch of photos that they get out of Walgreens or off their camera, it's a completely different experience from someone saying to them, this was important enough to be regarded as art. This was something that I decided to paint onto something and show you as a representation of my art. There are things that interest people, storefronts. You see artists that paint movie theaters, diners, old wrecks of cars like I like to paint, motorcycles, and these are things that just call out to those people. And you know, photographs are okay in the hands of a great photographer. My photos don't do them justice, but I think my paintings do.
And the second part of that was, I think, painting in realism, as opposed to photographing the object, like a bucket excavator or an oil rig or a shovel or an oscillating fan, is the attitude of the object. When you photograph something, it's just documenting. It could be a great photograph, but painting it allows the fan to speak. The fan just says, like, I'm elegant and he's captured me. And when I do the bucket excavator, those things are just cast on the side of the road in Blythe somewhere or in the bottom of a canyon. And here it is. They're proud. And he says, look how old I am and I'm still here. So it's the attitude of the object that I want everybody to see. So I paint it so that they'll look at it.